The Galactic Summit on Station Kepler-9 was humanity's first real invitation to the big leagues. After decades of begging, bribing, and proving they weren't going to accidentally blow up half the galaxy, humans had finally earned a seat at the table. Unfortunately, they'd also earned the janitorial contract. Harry pushed his cleaning cart down the crystalline corridors of the diplomatic wing, his mop sloshing in its bucket. The water was a peculiar shade of blue. Apparently, the Zephyrin delegates were allergic to Earth's H2O and required a specialized cleaning solution that cost more than his yearly salary. He didn't mind. Someone had to keep the place running while the politicians argued about trade routes and territorial disputes. "Hey, Harry," Jasmine's voice crackled through his comm unit. She was stationed 3 levels down, managing the waste reclamation systems. "You seeing the feed? The Empress just arrived." Harry glanced at the holographic displays lining the walls. They showed Empress Velcara of the Andromedan sovereignty stepping onto the station, her entourage of 100 attendants trailing behind her like a living cape. The Empress herself was magnificent, 3 meters tall with skin that shimmered like oil on water and hair that defied physics. It floated around her head in an impossible cloud of silver filaments, each strand apparently controlled by some form of bioelectric field. "Yeah, I see her," Harry muttered. "Means I'll be cleaning up after 100 more diplomats tonight." "At least you get to see the fancy people," Jasmine laughed. "I'm elbow deep in Chlorovian waste products. Do you know what those things eat?" "Don't want to know." Harry continued his rounds, methodically working through his checklist. The summit would last 3 days, which meant 3 days of double shifts and overtime pay. He was saving up for his sister's education back on Earth, and every credit counted. He was buffing the obsidian floors near the grand atrium when he heard it, a sound somewhere between a whale song and a violin being tortured. It was coming from the observation deck above, where the delegates often took breaks to admire the view of the Kepler Nebula. Harry abandoned his buffer and jogged toward the stairs. The sound grew louder, more desperate. As he climbed the steps 2 at a time, he heard voices, many voices, all speaking in different alien languages, all sounding equally panicked. He emerged onto the observation deck and froze. Empress Velcara, ruler of 300 worlds and commander of the most powerful fleet in the Andromedan arm, was stuck. Her magnificent physics-defying hair had somehow become entangled in the decorative railing that overlooked the atrium. The silver filaments had woven themselves through the ornate metalwork like a cat caught in yarn, and every attempt to pull free only made it worse. Around her, diplomats from a dozen species stood in a circle, gesticulating wildly but maintaining a respectful distance. No one dared touch the Empress. According to Andromedan law, laying hands on royalty without permission was punishable by death. "Can someone please help me?" the Empress said in perfect standard, her voice strained but maintaining its regal bearing. "This is highly undignified." A Zephyrin ambassador stepped forward, its gas-form body swirling nervously. "Your Majesty, we have summoned the station's chief engineer." "She should arrive within 30 minutes, another voice called out. It was Jasmine, who had apparently been monitoring the situation. "But Your Majesty, there's a human janitor right there who could help immediately." All eyes and several other sensory organs turned to Harry. The Empress twisted her head as much as she could, her luminous eyes fixing on him. "You, human, do you know how to untangle hair?" Harry swallowed hard. He thought about his sister, about the overtime pay, about the fact that touching an Empress without permission could get him executed. Then he thought about basic human decency and the fact that someone needed help. "Yes, Your Majesty," he said, stepping forward. "I have experience. My sister's hair used to get tangled in everything when she was young." A ripple of shock passed through the assembled diplomats. An elderly Vexorian counselor gasped so hard that his breathing apparatus fogged up. The Empress studied Harry for a long moment. Then, with all the gravity of a monarch signing a treaty, she said, "You have my permission to proceed." Harry set down his mop and approached carefully. Up close, the Empress's hair was even more remarkable. Each strand seemed to pulse with its own faint light, and they moved sluggishly as if swimming through invisible water. They had wound themselves around the railing in an impossibly complex knot. "This might take a few minutes," Harry said, examining the tangle. "And I'll need to touch your hair. Is that okay?" "It is acceptable," the Empress replied, her voice softer now. Harry began to work. He'd untangled countless messes in his life. Cables, fishing lines, his sister's hair after she'd played in the wind. This was just another problem to solve, one strand at a time. He worked methodically, gently separating each filament and threading it back through the railing. The observation deck fell silent except for the quiet sound of Harry's breathing and the soft whisper of hair sliding through metal. "What is your name, human?" the Empress asked. "Harry, Your Majesty. Harry Chen." "And you are a janitor on this station?" "Yes, ma'am. Have been for 3 years." "Tell me, Harry Chen, why did you help me when no one else would?" Harry paused, considering the question. "Because you needed help and I could provide it." "That's enough reason, isn't it?" The Empress was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed, a sound like crystal bells. So simple. So very human. 10 minutes later, the last strand came free. Harry stepped back, and the Empress's hair immediately resumed its floating, ethereal arrangement around her head. She turned to face him, and the entire observation deck seemed to hold its breath. "Harry Chen," she said formally, "you have rendered service to the Andromedan sovereignty. Name your reward." Harry thought about his sister, about the tuition payments, about all the practical things he could ask for. Instead, he heard himself say, "Just doing my job, Your Majesty. No reward necessary." The Empress's eyes widened slightly. Then she smiled, a gesture that seemed to light up the entire deck. "I see why Earth was finally invited to this summit. You people understand something the rest of us have forgotten." She reached into her robes and produced a small crystal chip. "This is a diplomatic cipher. It grants you access to the Andromedan Educational Network. I understand you have a sister?" Harry's hand trembled as he accepted the chip. It was worth more than he could earn in 10 lifetimes. "Thank you," he whispered. The Empress nodded regally, then swept away with her entourage, leaving the other diplomats staring at Harry in amazement. His comm unit crackled. "Harry, did that just happen?" Jasmine's voice was incredulous. "Yeah," Harry said, staring at the crystal chip. "Yeah, I think it did." He picked up his mop, pocketed the cipher, and went back to work. The floors still needed cleaning after all. Later that evening, as the summit's first session concluded, every diplomat in attendance received a memo from the Empress. It was brief. "Observe the humans. They understand that helping others requires no grand reason, only the ability to help and the willingness to do so. Perhaps that is why they will eventually surpass us all." Harry never saw the memo. He was too busy cleaning up after the celebration that followed, his mop moving in steady practice circles, a small smile on his face as he thought about his sister's future. In the vastness of space, among species that had conquered stars and bent physics to their will, it was a simple human janitor who reminded the galaxy of what truly mattered. Sometimes, saving the day didn't require weapons or genius or power. Sometimes, all it took was a steady hand, a kind heart, and a willingness to untangle someone's hair from a railing. Andy.